Okay, so let's talk about your launch list. So first of all, let's define it. Your launch list is a list that you build for and during a launch. And we generally use launch, well, let me first diagram it out for you. So let's just say you already have a list, okay? So here is your list, okay? And I mean, people have lists for all different types of things. They have newsletter lists, e-zine lists, they have promotion lists, they have whatever. But this is your list, and you've been putting people on your list, and you've been sending them some messages, whether they're autoresponder messages or whether they're newsletters or whatever. You've been sending them some email, or maybe they opted in and you haven't been sending them anything whatsoever, and they've been sitting there accumulating. That's fine. Either, I mean, it's not fine, it's not what you should be doing, but it doesn't matter for this discussion, because you're about to go into a launch, okay? And you're going to create a launch list. So let's just say you've been, your list is about playing guitar. It's about learning to play blues guitar. And now you are going to do a launch for a product about like the pentatonic guitar scales, okay? Now what you would typically do is you'd create this other list over here, and this other list, almost pretty much any list host, you can create as many different lists and sublists that you want. So what you would do is, you're mailing, then somewhere in here when you're ready to start your launch, you would mail these people into a squeeze page, okay? I'm going to abbreviate that as squeeze page. So you send them the squeeze page and you say, hey, I've got this really cool video for you about playing the pentatonic scale, and plus I've got some downloads for you. It's some great training and it's 100% free. Just go here, and you send them the squeeze page, and after they opt in, then they go onto your launch list. And then you would send them, PLC1, the whole sideways sales letter, PLC2, PLC3, we'll call it 1, 2, 3. This is your pre-launch content, and then of course, eventually they're going to get your sales video or sales letter. So why would you do this? Why would you go to the bother of having people that are already subscribed to you, are already on your list? Why would you send them to a squeeze page and ask them to opt in yet again? The reason is because if they've been they joined for some type of promise here. When they came to your site, there was some promise that said, opt in and we'll send you this, okay? Generally, when you go into a launch, the offer there is slightly different. And you're probably going to be sending them an email at a different frequency. Maybe they're getting an email once a week over here, or every other week, or 2 times a week. But once you get them into a launch, you're probably going to be emailing them a lot more. You'll be emailing for each piece of pre-launch content. You'll probably be mailing them in between each piece of pre-launch content. Once you open cart here, and you have your cart open that 5 to 7 days, you're going to be emailing them probably 2 times on that first day, and then you're going to be emailing them each day, and then on the closing day, you're probably going to mail them 2 or even 3 times. So if you add up all the email you're going to send them during the launch, you're probably going to send them on the order of at least 10, 12, maybe 15 emails. Now, a lot of people are like, well, won't that make them mad at me? Won't they unsubscribe from you? And the answer is, no, they won't if they're interested in getting the material. And the way that you know that they're interested is because they went through this process of joining your new launch list. Now, a lot of times people think, they think I'm just going to make them mad. They're going to hate me because I'm sending them so much email. The reality is, like I showed you in that last video, they actually love you. When you take them through this process and do this sideways sales letter and deliver some real value in the pre-launch content, especially if they're great videos and great training, maybe you have some downloads or something, they come out the end, whether they buy from you or not, they love you. And that's why we see that great launch list phenomena. That's why in that last email, you might have wondered, why is he talking about all these JVs and who cares about these big guru launches or whatever? I was just showing you, graphically, how I've seen this over and over, that the warmest, the best list that you can have is that launch list. We see it over and over in these JV competitions. So don't be afraid of sending people a lot of email, especially if they've asked for that email, by joining your launch list. And then typically, even if they do unsubscribe, they'll unsubscribe from the launch list and they'll still be on your main list. So basically, the launch list is a way of getting people's permission to send them this promotion, essentially. It's getting them to raise their hand. Now let's just say you have 10,000 people on this list over here. And I know a lot of people watching this will be like, 10,000 people, like why would I even bother? It's such a tiny list, I've got like 200,000. And there's a lot of other people that are like, oh man, I don't have a list, I'm never gonna have 10,000. Doesn't matter. I'm just using that as an example. It's gonna make the math easier for me. Typically if you go through something like this, it completely depends, of course, on that RFM model, how warm this list is, what your relationship is, how recently you've joined your list. But a lot of times, out of those 10,000, you might only get 2,000 to move over to your launch list. This can vary dramatically. I've seen it where it was like 80% of the people went over. But typically, 10 or 20% of your list joining your launch list, you're doing pretty good. And these people are going to be pure gold because they are very much interested in this. And the tests I've shown, just getting people to go through this process, these people are more responsive just having gone through this squeeze page process than they would have been if those same 2,000 people were over on this list. So it rejuvenates them. It's that recency again. By going through this process of raising their hand and saying yes, they've gone through that recency process and now they're that much warmer. And frankly, I see some serious crazy numbers that these people are worth once they go through that process. Now, is it possible to do a launch just not to bother with this and just to start sending out your pre-launch content over here to your main list? Absolutely, you can. If this launch is going to be for a product that is very much in alignment to what they opted in for, in other words, if they opted in for how to grow tomatoes, and then your launch is going to be, how to grow heirloom tomatoes, very, very similar match, you could just go ahead and send your entire list the entire launch. You could. If whatever the launch is going to be for is directly in alignment with what they originally joined your list for, you can do that. Especially if you've never done any kind of a launch before, maybe you do run your entire list through the entire sequence. But in general, I prefer to run people through a squeeze page and start a new launch list. And like I said, those launch lists, it's like this warm, fuzzy blanket because they are so powerful once people go through that process and join your launch list.